Welcome to the deep dive. We've gathered quite a stack of the latest reports and notes here from May 2025. It's all about cyber threats, tech developments, the whole landscape.
Yeah, it's definitely a fast-moving picture these days. These sources really highlight the speed and complexity.
So our mission today really is to cut through all that noise for you. We want to pull out the key nuggets, the stuff you really need to know.
Basically, give you the shortcut to understanding what's happening right now.
Exactly, without getting bogged down.
Yeah.
We're seeing themes like, persistent threats, a big focus on stealth, that line blurring between financial crime and espionage.
And how new tech fits in, plus the usual data breaches. It's all connected.
Okay, let's dive in then, starting with the cyber threat landscape itself. What are the big headlines jumping out from the material? What kind of threats are we seeing dominate?
Well, the main theme I'd say is this combination of really sophisticated attacks alongside ones that are just incredibly widespread. And there's a definite mix in motivations.
Right, so money and spying, essentially.
Pretty much. A lot of activity driven by straightforward financial gain, but also these complex campaigns that look like, or are even being called out as, state-sponsored espionage.
And I saw the sources mentioned specific state-linked activity, like governments actually pointing fingers.
Exactly. And that's what's significant here, the confidence level. The Czech Republic, for instance, formally attributed a 2022 attack on their Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
So cool.
They pointed to China-linked APT-31. Now, a government making that kind of public claim based on their investigation, that's a pretty big deal.
Wow, yeah, a direct accusation. And speaking of China-linked groups, there was something really surprising about APT-41 using Google Calendar. That caught my eye.
Yes. This is where it gets really interesting, showing how tactics are evolving. Reports indicate APT-41, another group researchers linked to China, is actually abusing Google Calendar for C2, command and control.
Wait, Google Calendar, how, like, setting up fake meetings to control malware? That sounds wild.
It does sound wild, but the cleverness, I suppose, is in the camouflage. Using a legitimate everyday service like Google Calendar means the malicious traffic just, it blends in. It looks normal to most security tools.
So how do they actually pass commands?
They might encode data in, say, event titles or descriptions, maybe even using specific timings. The malware on a compromised machine just needs to check the calendar. It's hiding in plain sight, really.
Huh. Among millions of normal calendar entries.
Precisely. And one technique mentioned in the sources is Unicode steganography, basically hiding information within text characters themselves in a way that's invisible to the eye but readable by a program.
Okay, so that theme of blending in using legitimate services, that's key. And beyond that stealthy C2, there was also stuff about China-linked APTs hitting SAP systems.
Correct. A significant report details exploiting an SAP vulnerability, CVE 2025-31324, and reportedly that led to 581 confirmed breaches around the world. Shows the scale, right, when major enterprise software gets targeted.
Definitely. Okay, so we have that sophisticated, sometimes state-linked activity. Let's switch gears slightly to the relentless threat of ransomware. There was a pretty shocking statistic in the material.
There was. One report suggests 69% of organizations were hit by ransomware in just the last 12 months.
69%. Wow, that's not just a headline risk anymore, is it? It's almost standard operating procedure to get hit.
It really underscores how pervasive it's become. It's a major operational risk for most businesses now.
And the sources had specific examples too, right? Different gangs, different tactics.
They did. We see groups like the Interlock Gang deploying new tools. They've got this RAT called NodeSnake, apparently targeting UK education specifically, and it's actively being developed, which shows they're constantly updating.
Always refining their tools.
Exactly. Then there's the sheer financial costs, like that $19 million Robinhood ransomware attack on Baltimore, where an Iranian national actually pleaded guilty. That case also highlighted techniques like BYOVD, bring your own vulnerable driver. Attackers use flaws in legitimate, low-level system software drivers to gain deep system access. It's sneaky.
Sneaky and effective, sounds like.
Very. And we also saw reports about the Salvation Army being impacted, disrupting their services, plus the Dragon Force gang exploiting flaws in simple help software. Sophos researchers called them a destabilizing force in the ransomware world, especially after Lockbit got disrupted.
A destabilizing force. Gives you a sense of the chaos and competition in that whole ransomware underground.
Absolutely. It's a whole ecosystem, on top of the nation-state stuff we were just talking about.
Okay, so moving on from ransomware hitting typical targets, the sources also seem to focus a lot on stealth and persistence, especially going after devices we might not think about securing as much. Tell me about botnets hitting weird places.
Yeah, this is another angle on that stealth trend. There's a report on a new botnet written in Go called PumaBot. It targets Linux systems, but not servers or desktops primarily. Embedded Linux IoT devices, things like surveillance cameras. It gets in using brute force attacks against SSH, basically guessing passwords.
So cameras, maybe other simple devices sitting on a network, just getting quietly pulled into a botnet.
Yep.
Devices people probably never update.
Exactly. And PumaBot is built for persistence. It tries to hide itself using names that look like legitimate system files, XMRig, network XM, things like that. And it uses standard Linux tools like System to make sure it starts up again if the device reboots.
What's it doing? Just mining crypto?
That seems to be part of it, but it also reportedly includes tools for stealing credentials, sort of like a rootkit for your camera or smart device.
That's unsettling. And it wasn't just cameras, right? The sources mentioned home routers, too.
Yes, and this is maybe even more concerning for you listening at home. A sophisticated botnet reportedly hacked over 9,000 ASUS routers, and the key thing, it installed persistent SSH backdoors.
Persistent.
Meaning they're designed to survive reboots and even firmware updates.
A backdoor that survives a firmware update. That sounds really hard for a regular person to even know about, let alone fix.
It is very difficult. And the source reporting this suggested that the sophistication and stealth involved might point towards a nation-state actor. It really highlights how even the devices on the edge of our home networks, often forgotten about, are becoming targets.
Advanced targets, potentially.
Could be.
Okay, this focus on using what's already there, Google Calendar, system services, components on a router, it feels connected to another term that came up a lot. Living off the land, or LOL bins.
Exactly, LOL bins. It stands for Living Off the Land binaries. These are legitimate system tools, things already installed on your computer. Think PowerShell on Windows, or command line tools on Mac or Linux.
Tools that are supposed to be there.
Right. And attackers weaponize those tools instead of dropping their own custom malware.
So they use the victim's own system against them. Why? What's the advantage?
The main advantage is stealth. Because these are trusted programs, their activity doesn't immediately trigger red flags like some unknown malicious file might. It makes detection much harder for traditional antivirus or security tools.
So you can't just look for bad files anymore.
Not reliably. This is why the focus is shifting towards threat hunting, actively looking for how these legitimate tools are being used. Looking for unusual behavior, suspicious patterns and logs, deviations from normal activity rather than just scanning signatures.
Okay, so attackers are getting stealthier, hitting unexpected devices, using built-in tools. What happens when they do get through? The sources also covered quite a few data breaches and disruptions.
Yeah, the consequences are definitely real. LexisNexis disclosed a breach affecting about 364,000 people. And an important detail from the reports, it seems this happened back in late 2024, and the data actually came via a third-party platform, GitHub.
Ah, the classic third-party risk. Always a potential weak spot.
It really is. We also saw a pretty significant security incident hitting Victoria's Secret. It took down their website, stopped some in-store services.
Do we know what happened there?
The sources didn't have official confirmation, but they did mention public speculation, like discussions on Reddit suggesting it might have been ransomware or some kind of data breach.
And more retail hits too, right? I think I saw Dior and Adidas mentioned.
Yes, reports of recent breaches impacting Dior fashion and accessories, and also Adidas. It just shows that the retail sector remains a very attractive and often vulnerable target.
Seems like it. And it's not just breaches from attacks, but also just plain old vulnerabilities being found in software and hardware all the time.
Absolutely. A really critical one highlighted was an unpatched flaw in a WordPress plugin, the TI WooCommerce Wishlist plugin. It's got a CVSS score of 10.0.
10.0. That's maximum severity, right?
Yeah.
What does that actually mean for a website using it?
It means it's about as bad as a vulnerability can get. This specific one allows anyone, without even needing to log in, to just upload malicious files straight onto the website.
Wow.
Yeah. And with over 100,000 sites reportedly using this plugin, that's a huge attack surface just waiting to be exploited. A really simple way for attackers to compromise a lot of sites.
That's genuinely terrifying for anyone running one of those sites.
It really is. Other things reported included a flaw in the Microsoft OneDrive file picker that could potentially give apps more access to your cloud files than you intended. And also an issue with a recent Windows 11 update KB5058405 apparently causing startup problems for some users.
So it's this constant battle, isn't it?
And sure.
Fixing flaws and widely used stuff. And all this cyber threat activity, it's happening against a backdrop of really fast tech changes, too. The Sorensen touched on that briefly.
They did. Just context, really. Things like NVIDIA and AMD developing maybe less powerful AI chips, reportedly due to export rules, and NVIDIA even mentioning a potential revenue impact.
Interesting dynamic there.
Yeah, but also some really exciting progress, like BillDots using AI for construction site monitoring, really advanced robotics for delicate tasks, like that DXE robot example, and incredible AI uses, like decoding muscle signals for more intuitive prosthetic arms.
That AI progress is amazing. But I guess connecting it back, every new tech development, every new connection point, probably creates new security challenges, too.
Absolutely. It's almost inevitable. New capabilities nearly always mean new attack surfaces, or at least force us to rethink security assumptions. Whether it's AI chips, robots, or just changes in how we use DMs on social media, the security landscape has to adapt.
Okay, so let's try and pull this all together then. We've gone from, formal nation-state attributions and super sneaky tricks like using Google Calendar through to the sheer scale of ransomware and vulnerabilities affecting things like our home routers or website plugins. What does this actually mean for you, the listener? Why should you care about these specific incidents?
Yeah, the why is really the core of it. These specific examples, they aren't just, isolated tech news stories for security nerds.
Yeah.
They actually illustrate these fundamental shifts happening in the digital world that affect everyone.
How so?
Well, understanding that, yes, sophisticated groups are abusing services you use daily, like Google Calendar. Understanding that your home router is a target for potentially advanced attackers. Knowing that a flaw in a common website plugin can put thousands of sites, maybe sites you visit, at risk. This knowledge is actually part of your defense now.
It's awareness, basically.
It's awareness, yes. It helps you appreciate the complexity, maybe ask better questions about the security of the services or devices you rely on. It helps you understand why digital security isn't just some abstract IT department problem anymore. It really touches our daily lives. It's about navigating this increasingly complex digital world more safely and effectively.
Yeah, that really makes sense. It's not optional knowledge anymore, is it? Digital security is just part of everything.
It really is, yeah. Woven into the fabric of things now.
Well, that was definitely a deep dive. We covered a lot of ground from high-level state actors and stealth tactics right down to ransomware's reach and those vulnerabilities in everyday tech.
A lot to absorb for sure, but hopefully useful context for anyone living online today.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. And maybe here's a final thought for you to chew on, something that comes out of all this. If attackers are now actively exploiting things we see as completely normal and legitimate, like Google Calendar, like our home routers, and doing with persistence, how does our growing dependence on all this interconnected tech fundamentally change the game for security? Does it make security, in a way, everyone's job now, not just the experts? Something to think about.